This is Tiffany Jones, and you are watching the first episode of The District, Community Conversations with Tiffany Jones. The main intent of this show is to elevate voices that aren't always heard and people that aren't always seen. So you'll see people on this show that you're familiar with and some you're not too familiar with. But tonight we have someone that I know that you know, and that is former Police Commissioner Darryl DeSousa. Thank you so much for being here today, Commissioner.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Tiffany. I feel honored to be your first guest. I really appreciate you. It was great running into you a couple of weeks ago. Of course, we were practicing social distancing, but it was great to see you. So, and thanks for having me.
It was great to see you too, and thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. So for those of you who aren't familiar with Darryl DeSousa, he is a 30-year veteran with the Baltimore City Police Department. In 2018, he was promoted to Police Commissioner. He has an extensive career in law enforcement. He has held a number of leadership positions. He was appointed Deputy Police Commissioner in 2015 after serving as the Chief of Patrol. He was appointed as a law enforcement fellow with the International Associations of Chief of Police in August 2016. He led an advisory group to review the legal implementations of body-worn cameras and test their use in the Baltimore City Police Department. He led the first ever cybercrime unit for the Baltimore Police Department, focusing on cell phone and computer forensics, online crimes, and video evidence retrieval. He has received countless honors and awards, but what tops all of this off is that he's a graduate of my alma mater, Morgan State University. So first, I just want to ask you how you've been and how you're feeling.
Oh, wow. Again, Tiffany, thanks again. I feel great. I feel blessed. I'm truly thankful. But I'm still a little bit concerned about what we're seeing today as it relates to the events unfolding, police brutality, what we're seeing across the country with a divided country. And although I'm still kind of hesitant and worried a little bit and concerned, I remain optimistic. And if there was a message that I just would say right now is that I encourage everybody just to go out and vote, because your vote is so critical this year. It really counts. So other than that, everything is great. I'm glad to be back home.
Oh, great. So, well, before I get into this first question, since you mentioned voting, what do you think about the elections that's going on in Baltimore City right now?
I think it's a real good, fair election. I think it's going to be real interesting to see how Baltimore reacts and how Baltimore votes. I really do think there are three great candidates, if you ask me, at this point. But I'm looking forward to seeing what happens. And really, Baltimore really does need a real strong business plan to move forward.
Okay, so now every story has a beginning. So how did you go from a kid from Queens, New York, to an officer in Baltimore City?
So I, born and raised in Queens, and when I turned 18, actually when I was 17, I turned 18 when I moved away. I actually left Baltimore, and I went to school at Virginia State University in Petersburg, Virginia. It was the first time that my brother and I'm a twin. It's the first time we were actually separated because, school and home, we were together all our lives, obviously. And he decided to go to Morgan State University, and I decided to go a little further south to Petersburg, Virginia. And I ended up just staying a semester because I got kind of homesick a little bit, and the distance was a little bit further than what I anticipated. So my brother actually came to Petersburg to visit. So he came down an early part of the weekend, and his roommate at the time was actually from Petersburg, Virginia. So I actually drove back with him and his roommate to accompany, provide assistance with a friend that his roommate knew ride up to Baltimore and a ride back. And what happened was I actually got left. I got stuck. I got stuck on campus. I got stuck at Morgan State.
Wow.
I didn't have a ride back home.
Oh no.
But when I say back home, I mean Petersburg, Virginia. So
Right.
it took me 2 or 3 days. And in those 2 or 3 days, I just fell in love with Morgan State. I fell in love with Baltimore.
Wow.
And I ended up transferring. And this was in, oh my gosh, 1983.
Mm.
So I ended up transferring. And that's all she wrote, really. I've been in Baltimore since then.
That is really interesting. So like, okay, so within 2018, okay, within months of receiving your promotion to be Baltimore Police Commissioner, so you were charged with a failure to pay taxes and sentenced 10 months in federal prison. And
Right.
now you sit before us, time served and free, and you were riding a wave of, success, and then suddenly you're thrusted into this valley experience. Like, what was it like to be you in that moment, and how did it change you?
It was tough, I'll be honest with you. But I took that opportunity really to kind of self-reflect on myself. And every now and then in life, you have to sit still.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I did. I sat still. And as I sat still, I reflect on my past and my present and where I wanted to go in the future. But obviously, the big elephant in the room was, taking your freedom away, getting my freedom removed, and the toughest day really probably in my life probably was May 13th in 2019. That's when I had to self-surrender. And, my family and friends, drove me up to the institution in New Jersey. And it was really difficult, to say goodbye, obviously, because I knew I was going to see my family and friends again, but my kids, but, taking your freedom away was a bit of a challenge. So, you're taking your physical freedom away. And also, if you really think about it, it's, your mental freedom as well. So I had the opportunity really to reflect. And I knew at that point that I wasn't going to be like that ostrich that, ostrich buries his head in the sand when the storm comes.
Right.
I knew I was better than that.
Mm-hmm.
I said, let me take a different posture here. I want to be that eagle that's going to elevate through this storm. Mm-hmm. And that's the posture I took when I was at the institution. I didn't want to waste that time. And that 10 months really was, it was a learning experience. It was a great exposure to meeting different men from all walks of life that have challenges. And I knew I wanted to be productive, as I always was in life, and always wanted to help. So I started a class. I got a course approved through the BOP, the Bureau of Prisons Education Department. And I actually had a class. And the class lasted 12 weeks. It was called A Mile, and it was Men Inside Leading by Example.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and some of the stories you learn, and some of the walks of life that people go through, you just can't take it for granted.
Mm-hmm.
I know you heard that saying before, don't judge someone until you walk a mile in their shoes.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and that's true.
And you never know, until you walk in those shoes, how it is. Right.
And I'll even go a step further and say I literally walked in someone else's shoe, because when you get to the institution, they give you a pair of slide-on sneakers. They're very uncomfortable. It's typically protocol, or the friends you make right away. They give you a used pair of sneakers that, they keep, or they don't really use, or they deliberately hold on to for somebody new coming in. So I actually had a used pair of sneakers that I got from Mr. Lee. Mr. Lee was from New York, and Jamaican gentleman, great guy. And I literally wore those sneakers until I was able to buy my own through commissary. But you literally walk a mile in somebody else's shoes. And those shoes that I had that Mr. Lee gave me, someone gave it to him, and someone gave it to him. So, you're literally walking a mile in someone else's shoes. Mm-hmm. The stories you hear, firsthand, and the friends that you make literally walking around that track, a mile around that track. You just can't judge. You can't judge anybody
Yep,
until you
until you've
literally
gone
walk.
through it.
Yeah, yeah, literally.
So what you've gone through, do you think it has affected your outlook on policing right now? Because you've been very vocal about defunding the police, and we'll get into that next. But
Sure.
do you feel like this experience has affected your outlook? Has it changed your outlook on policing
It opened up a new side of
or the
my
judicial system? I'll say, yeah.
yeah. It opened up it opened up a lot of light, and I had a chance to really do some reflecting and meet great guys, from all walks of life, that was in the institution, and the justice system really, it does need some work. I was very fortunate to have, you know, a decent experience there, and I was in a camp. I've met guys who actually made it down to the camp from penitentiaries and the mediums and the lows, and to hear some of the stories that they share and some of the challenges, it really opens your eyes and say that we can be better as people. We can be better police officers. We can be better dads. We can be better neighbors in society. So it did change my thought process on how I see things, and not be like I said, don't judge somebody until you know what their full story is.
Mm-hmm.
People do things in life. You don't know the backstory,
Right.
and you can't judge somebody from like a manila folder that's in your file cabinet that has your name, Darryl DeSousa or Tiffany Jones.
Mm-hmm.
You can't judge somebody by your transcripts at Morgan State University, because you're more than that. You can't judge somebody by an email, or electronic folder.
Mm-hmm.
There's something, there's a story behind that. Until you know that person and get to know that person, it's just not fair. Things should be really different, especially in policing.
Mm-hmm.
An opportunity to really know the community, and I've always been a community person, but really
I
take the
know. I know.
opportunity to know somebody, know the guys that you may not necessarily associate with, because trust me when I say this, you can learn a lot from them, and I did.
Mm-hmm. So, you don't hear a lot of officers talking about defunding the police. And so when you came out talking about, I mean, I just think it's extraordinary, and it's, in my opinion, courageous, to do that as an officer.
Mhm.
So, you've been outspoken about it. And can you describe to the audience exactly what defunding means to you? Because right now, I think the word is a little, I don't want to say problematic, but
Mhm.
it is, because some people think it means abolishing the police. Everyone has different definitions of it.
Correct.
And it scares the community sometimes when they hear, defunding. Oh, we need the police, so what is your definition? How would you describe defunding? And what does defunding mean to you? And how would it look realistically, like with the BPD?
Yeah, so I'm glad that this is a very critical topic that everybody's talking about now, and I think what you just said is, what's the definition of defunding? And I don't mean at all to abolish or disband police departments, because we need police on the streets. Um, my definition, and what I'm referring to, is financial reform, um, where you take allocated funds that would normally go to a police department or other city agencies within other departments within city agencies, and allocating some of that funds where it goes right back to the community to help the community. So you're getting experts, you're funding experts that come from the community. You're creating jobs, you're getting experts who knows the community better than someone from the community? So you're getting experts from there to come in and work alongside with the police department. And there's so many different things and so many different ways how that would look. And I'll just give you a perfect example is that, there's one PAL center right now left. I know it's independent.
Wow.
Yeah, it's independent from the police department. It's actually a community center, but what's one of the longest standing PAL centers in the city. And since the the 90s, I think it was created in 94 and 95. And I'm almost close to it, but it's roughly around 4,500 kids that went through that program. And the program was very successful because no child that went through that program came in harm's way in terms of extreme violence. This is proven. They had kids from the PAL centers that actually turned around and joined police departments. The PAL Center gives outlet for kids. It's a safe haven for kids. It gets kids out of that problematic time frame from 3 p.m. to 7 when mom and dad are away at work. So imagine just being able to create 8, 9, or 10 other PAL centers throughout the city. Just do the math on that. And the other thing that's critically important really is, and I know some police departments have it, I know Baltimore does it, but having these mental health experts, really to come in and really to work side by side by the police. And I know if you've seen it on the news and social media, don't send a non-law enforcement person into somebody's house or where somebody is suffering from some type of mental crisis because they're not going to be safe. I'm not saying that. I'm saying they work alongside with the police department. And in those circumstances where, they can step in or they can take the lead on some community people that really suffer. And I'll give you maybe a soft example is that, say you live on a block and even where I live here, there's a gentleman that almost every other day comes out his backyard and he has a stick and he's banging his stick up on the street side. And, you would think that, I would think that I know that he's going through some type of crisis, that he's not right. But if somebody doesn't know the community and someone calls the police, they can easily say, there's a guy beating cars and beating street signs, and the police will come and, you pray that the situation ends in a positive way. But if someone from this community knows this gentleman suffers from a crisis, he or she is able to report that in an appropriate way and give him help. So, and
are officers trained in identifying when a person is in crisis though? Are they trained to do that? Because they're not doctors, so.
That's really good. That's a good question because, the training that police departments receive, it's not training like a healthcare professional. The training that policing receive really is, at best, probably nowadays, 40, 60 hours, of specialized training in that area, and they're thrust into it on the streets.
Right.
When the training should be more. And the question is that we know when people are symptomatic, when they're having those episodes, you can see it, I can see it, I see it with the gentleman across the street. But how about those asymptomatic conditions that, unless you're an expert, you won't know.
Right.
It could be something that, snaps. The person could see something and hear something, the way you respond to him, something can snap and that person just, goes through a severe crisis. So they do receive training, but it really should be more experts. There really should be experts in every district in Baltimore City on all shifts. So I don't know what the procedure is now, but before it was no coverage 24/7 from what I understand. Now I'm not sure. But it's needed. It's needed to fund positions like that.
And how do you feel like defunding the police do you feel like it will successfully decrease the crime in the city?
I think so. And the reason why I say that is because people don't realize um, the day in and day out calls for service and some of the duties that police officers go through. So if you're able to establish programs in the city, like mental health technicians or experts, community ambassadors to take care of low, minor crime disputes, crimes similar to that, that's really doesn't pose a danger. What's happening is that you're actually freeing up the patrol officer
Mm-hmm.
to do other things in the community. And some of the other things in the community that they ought to do is non-enforcement activities where they're making friends, they're bridging the gap, they're building relationships. So it actually frees them up to be able to be in the places where they need to be visibly. And I don't mean being in those places just to put a pair of handcuffs on somebody, but
Right.
being visible and actually helping the community the way policing should look, which is being a guardian and not a warrior.
So you've been quoted as saying policing needs to be torn down and rebuilt. So what would that look like to you, for the community of Baltimore?
So I'm not saying, again, I'm glad you asked, and I'm glad I got the opportunity to clarify this.
Yeah, clarify.
Now, I'm not saying
Right.
that we need to, or police departments need to clean the house. I'm not saying that at all. There are some great officers in Baltimore. I know that. They are great officers in different parts of the country because I know that. I know them. I've seen it with my own two eyes. What I mean about this whole fresh start or just building back up is kind of like training with a philosophy where it's all about restorative healing, where it's all about cultural competence, where it's all about empathy, emotional intelligence. Everything is more trust related or building trust or coming from the heart or healing, versus that mentality of me being a warrior and I'm gonna go in this community and I'm gonna, clean house. If I think somebody's doing this or that, clean house completely. No,
Mm-hmm.
it's more about restorative healing and introducing programs in policing where that's the emphasis. The emphasis is placed on how can I help, versus an enforcement based mentality.
Okay. And when you say that, it sounds great, but I kind of worry about I have to say murderers
Yeah.
that took out ones, like people like, George Floyd and, Breonna. So, is that going to help? I just can't see it helping those. Like, how do we kind of get rid of officers like that or prevent getting those, getting officers like that? So,
Yeah. So
I know.
that's a good question.
Like when you say it, it's great. It's just, it's so,
So if when a police officer is hired, that's one of the first things that they should be evaluated on.
Mm-hmm.
What their, how they are, empathy, how they are with emotional intelligence, how are they in terms of social awareness versus, what's, of course you don't want to get someone in the police department that, that has an egregious record, but, versus, did you smoke weed before? Or,
Yeah, I mean, that's, yeah.
yeah,
Right.
you smoke weed 5 times, you can only smoke it 4 times.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
But, how is that person? How are you evaluating that person in a community? Are you a community-based person? Where is your heart? Where is your mind at in terms of going out and being somebody that wants to heal versus that somebody that wants to go out there and be that police officer that wants to arrest the crime issues away, and you can't. Everybody knows that you can't do it.
Yeah, and I know one delegate is talking about introducing. He's saying, officers should be asked if they are in like a white supremacist group. Like when
Yeah,
they're interviewing. So before they get the job, like, are you involved? So I mean, personally, I think that would be a great idea to do.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And then I had even said before, and I would say it again today, is that community leaders and community folks that reside in the area really should be identifying those young men and those young women that live in their own community and present them to the police department and say, look, this young lady named Tiffany, she's just graduating from Oregon. She has a passion for law enforcement. She lives in the community. We can vouch for her. So you're developing a policy where, you're including the community in the hiring process.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, and I think honestly, I think we should have some law enforcement classes in school. So
Absolutely.
when kids are brought up, they want to serve. They serve their own community. So start while they're younger. So when they get out into the community, they know their neighbors,
Absolutely.
I mean, I think that would be good to have in the, in the schools.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. And so let me ask you, so you talked about, we talk about defunding.
Mm-hmm.
And how would you like to see the money from defunding police invested into the community? And what would you view as the key areas?
Again, I touched a little bit on two of them, but one is mental health, getting mental health experts within the police department. I mean, like, your partner, they're your partner, and they're able to go out with you each and every day to help. And I want to shed light on one thing, that if you go to the Washington Post, they have a database. You Google Washington Post database on police fatal shootings, and if you look at the number of police shootings that occur each year, which is roughly right around 1,000, roughly. And the Washington Post actually started collecting this data in 2015. So if you look at it, there's 5,600 police involved shootings since then, fatalities. And the Washington Post does a great job on how they break down the data in there, and they break down the data where there's a drop box that says, did the person suffer, from a mental illness?
Mm-hmm.
And, if you look at it, each year it's consistently right around 23% saying, yes, they did. Right, 23%.
Yeah.
But there's a bigger percentage, 70, 74, 75%, where it says no or unknown. So how do you know if you're not an expert? Really, is a no.
Right.
If you're not an expert, how do you know it's not an unknown?
Mm-hmm.
So putting money directly into something that really is going to build upon this whole mental health crisis, I think that's a win-win for police departments in the country, especially here in Baltimore.
Yeah, we see it every day. Whether you're on the bus or it's your neighbor. In my job, we get a lot of complainants calling who suffer from mental illnesses. And it's definitely a big issue in Baltimore. And so,
and it should go even a step. Even if we just digress a little bit, so we really just can't say police. We need mental health technicians with them. There's really got to be a whole educational piece where we're actually forming the community on what to look for and how to report it. you know how to report it. So this same example I use with this gentleman across the street pounding on a stick. Suppose he just jumped over somebody's fence or walked in somebody's yard and took that same stick and was hitting the window, and somebody knew he didn't live there, and that person said, well, I got a man that's breaking in somebody's house.
Mm-hmm.
You know, well, let's just evaluate it and just give as much information to a police officer or the police dispatcher, train the community and say, wait a minute, you know, triage that call a little bit better and say, well, do you know the person? Do you know the history? You know where they live? Have they done this before? Is this the first time you're seeing this type of behavior? So it comes with a whole educational piece on top of these healthcare professionals that work with the police department. And then the follow-up piece to that is just exactly what it is, a follow-up where you know who in each community suffers from the illness. So if these experts are not needed, you know, certain days of the week, or it's a time of the day where it's a slow shift or whatever the case may be, that you're doing a follow-up, you know, with that person and with their family. And that person is getting to know you. They're getting to know Tiffany as a mental health expert, and they're getting to know Darryl DeSousa as a police officer, because we have time to go and, you know, when we don't need to go, and kind of like building a rapport with that person and the family.
Right. So
that's one thing. Yeah, that's the main thing where the money should go in a program like that. And obviously, I'd be remiss if I didn't say, you know, different community organizations in Baltimore do a fabulous job. And I've always been a big fan of Eric Alston and Cease Fire.
Yes.
Yeah, I've always been a big fan of Stand Up Baltimore. You know, D. Chase and Kathleen Bird and everybody. Just imagine if they had more resources and they were able to expand throughout the city. So programs that exist that work already, that's my whole philosophy.
Right.
Exactly.
And I'm thinking community mediation too. Because I personally worked with them, and they're great, and more people should know about them so they can handle you know, abuse, and you know, but giving them more money will put more of the information out, you know, about them too.
Absolutely.
So people can know that they can reach out to those resources.
Absolutely.
So had you been able to carry out your plans as commissioner, how would Baltimore look today, and how would your crime plan look? Because right now, I'm sorry, people aren't, I'm not sure, I don't even know if we have a crime plan right now. I'm not sure, like, what, you know, some people are happy with what's going on, like with the leadership, with the new commissioner, and some aren't, but that's just how it is. But, you know, how would your crime plan look?
Well, I narrowly removed from, you know, looking at, you know, the patterns and the trends, and I don't know the new administration. I do not know the new commissioner. I have not met him. I haven't had the opportunity to meet him yet. I don't watch the news too much. Actually, very little. But so I'm not very versed on what's happening now. Although, you know, in my community, or, you know, if I go grab a bite somewhere to eat, you know, somebody will, you know, kind of like share some information, or family members would share information. But I say all that to say is that the key to crime reduction, is building trust. And
Absolutely.
That's what my whole, you know, and not just when I was in a role for a short period of time, you know, really growing up, you know, 'cause I saw my mother do it when she was a nurse in New York. But really, just being able to connect community with law enforcement in a positive way. That's how you fight crime. Obviously, as people are going to be listening, and people that are really concerned about, you know, that person down the street that has a gun and is firing it, you know, of course, you know, you got to let technology work. You know, you got to look at and be very specific, with who you are looking at. And there's great people in Baltimore from every single corner that I know, every single corner. And they all want the same thing. But there are a few bad actors out there who are the violent repeat offenders.
Mm-hmm.
And that's who, the focus should be geared towards them. And I mean in a constitutional way. You're not violating anybody's rights. You're not going into a community because you may not know, who that violent repeat offender is, and you're casting a big net over an entire community. You're not doing that. It has to be very specific to a specific person who's doing it. So that was my plan. That was really the plan. But again, community policing, creating policies with the community, asking the community what do they want to see from us.
Absolutely, and that's what we have to bring the community to the table and let them in on, like, how does policing look to them?
Yeah.
And I absolutely agree with that.
Yeah. I'll give you an example, and like take for example the young men who do the squeegee stuff in parts of the city. It's against the law. Aggressive panhandling is against the law. But in your community, these are probably the same young men that you see struggling to put food on their table or clothes on their back. Do we really want to criminalize them, or do we want to establish or create programs really to help them?
Right.
So that effort, has to come from the community, and there has to be incidents like that and it's very similar incidents like that, or cases like that, or crimes like that the community really has to evaluate along with the police department and say, hey, wait a minute, I think we can do some type of intervention, versus arrest. So it's bringing everybody to the table and having a conversation, creating policy.
Yeah, and that's not really happening right now, in my opinion, where the whole community is at the table. So there was one question I always wonder about with law enforcement, especially with Black officers. Is it difficult, and I guess it depends on your location, like where you live, but Baltimore City. Is it difficult being a Black man working in law enforcement? And do you ever feel like you have to choose between the two?
It's you got to look at historically first, and obviously historically there wasn't a whole lot of opportunities for Black and brown folks to men and women to put the uniform on and do police work. Look at the history behind it. I will say that Baltimore Police and some agencies that I know are doing a really great job at trying to bring diversity to the workforce. But there's still a challenge that I see, because people that I talk to, they share a lot of kind of personal stories that it's kind of tough to listen to. But I think at the end of the day, we know that the African American culture has always been a strong culture. It takes a village to raise a child. So African American police officer has always been part of that village, and he or she should be the one to take that flag and throw that flag up the minute they see something that's inappropriate. However, at the end of the day, regardless of your skin color, you got to be, that man or that woman police officer, regardless of your ethnicity, to say this is morally not right. This is, I don't like what I'm seeing. I don't like what you did. It's my responsibility to intervene. It's my responsibility to say something and stand up for the community. Hope that answers that.
Yeah, so on your stance, like, with this and on defunding, like, how do your colleagues feel about that? Do you ever get any kind of pushback because of, how you feel about, how
Um,
policing should change?
yeah, there's a lot of sentiments behind it. There's a lot of people in policing, even that retired, that has said the same thing that I'm really close with. But police officers want to see change also.
Mm,
They want to see it. A lot of times maybe it's that rank and file that doesn't know the right way to express themselves, or they might be or feel intimidated in saying something, but in their own way, they don't agree on some of the things that they've been asked to do, over the years, and they want the same change. They want safety in the community. They want to build relationships the same way. And it's a lot. It's a work in progress.
yeah, it's kind of hard to see that sometimes though because of the science, the silence. So when they say like silence is being complicit with it.
Sure.
And how do you feel about officers that don't say anything? And I particularly have a issue with that with black officers.
Mm,
Like if you're a black officer and you see George Floyd being
yeah.
murdered by an officer, a white man,
Yeah.
and you still making up excuses or you're not speaking out against it, I have a problem with that. And so, how do you feel about officers? Like, I don't know that thinking. Like, so are they choosing to be an officer first before being a black man?
That's a really good question, and I would say it like this. I would say that regardless of your skin color,
Mm-hmm.
if you see something like that George Floyd, the tragic incident, regardless of your skin color, you got to say something.
Mm-hmm.
You got to intervene.
Wrong is
You got
wrong.
wrong is wrong. You got to step up and say something. And policing should have this whole mentality that you have to patrol your neighborhood, your community, your post, as if though every single person in there is a family member of
And
yours.
live in that community, which I
Yeah,
think just passed, right?
yeah,
So officers have to live there.
yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. But that's tough, and being a black officer, you can't turn a blind eye to that.
Mhm.
You have to be able to say something without fear, of repercussions or fear of retaliation.
But it usually is retaliation, like something done when you speak out,
Yeah,
though, right? I mean,
yeah. Well, I've seen it. Yeah, there are, I've seen it plenty of times where people are being retaliated against for saying something. I've seen it in my career. You know,
mhm,
there's a policy. It's called duty to intercede, and
mhm.
there's a lot of agencies that have that. I know there's an agency in South Carolina that really does a great job with it. I met a young man who's assistant chief down there, I believe. But duty to intercede, really, if you think about it, if you fail to intercede, if you fail to step up and stop or prevent or say something, the penalty departmentally should be equally or more harsh than actually the person who is committing that violation.
Oh, wow.
You know, that's the way you got to look at it. If you want to keep a job,
Because you're
you
just as guilty if you look at, if
absolutely,
you standing right there and you letting it happen, you're just as guilty as the person that's doing it.
absolutely, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Okay, so let me see. What are you doing to give back to the community? And do you have any projects that you're working on right now?
All right, so good question. So Tiffany, I'm gonna tell you like this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I am working. I am doing a lot of projects. I'm working on a project similar to what I did at the institution in this course that I taught, and it's very similar to it. But we're taking it. When I say we, the young man that I was in the institution with, he's also released, and we're building on that
Good.
so we can connect law enforcement and community. But it's a real big project. I can't share all the details yet, but I will say, and I will promise that when we're done, I'm going to call you first. And
Great, good.
I'm going to share it with you.
Please do.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to it, because that's my big thing is connecting the community and law enforcement, because we have a lot of healing to do, and there's no trust in the city. We don't. I mean, the community don't trust the officers, and I'm sorry, but rightfully so, because so much stuff has happened. So when I hear stuff like this, it gives me hope. And I just hope, that the community is really, involved in that process. I look forward to that.
I'm excited about it, and it's a lot of work that's being done, literally every single day on it. And I can't wait to, really everything gets finalized, because I think it's, what Baltimore, and it's not just limited to Baltimore, but it's, surrounding agencies and, across the country. I think this is really what we need.
And I just have one more question, really. And I thought about, we have like a young people issue in Baltimore. When I say that, I mean, it's a lot of young people committing crimes and everything now. And it's a lot behind that, But and they view police, as the enemy, and But I was wondering, growing up, for you, did you have any like conflict with the officers? What was the culture like growing up, like in your community and police? Because it was different when I was growing up. Like, I loved officer friendly until me and my sisters were sitting on the steps and the officer tried to arrest her. And it broke everything. It broke all the trust. I had to run in the house and get my father, because he was, a community leader. And so the officers, they wanted to make sure she lived there. But I loved officer friendly until it was ruined, So how was it for you,
Growing up, I really did not come in contact with police. My parents made sure I didn't, because they were the police.
Okay.
And they had their use of force policies on us.
I think all of us had a use of force.
That's right.
Right. We have it in my home.
I had different challenges growing up. As it was the mid to late '70s, and I was in that tail end of the culture where we were being bused to a school outside of our community. So all the issues that came with it, that's when I, as a young man, was experienced. However, when I went to high school, when I was a freshman, my first year, that's when I actually had my first encounter with a police officer. And I remember that in high school, they would give us a bus pass, and and a train pass. It was a piece of paper, and each month it was a different color. And I had a uniform shirt that I had to put it in so I wouldn't lose it. And I was responsible for washing my own clothes, as my siblings were. And I made a mistake and washed my clothes one day, and the bus pass that month, the train pass, was supposed to be like light sky blue, but I washed it. It turned white completely. And when I went through the Parsons Boulevard off of Jamaica Avenue, I just did my regular thing, and you show it to the person behind the counter, and you just went through, and the next thing I know, at the blink of an eye, the police had grabbed me up, and they were like, "You're illegally coming in the station, the subway station." I said, "No, I'm not." I said, "I got my bus pass right here." They're like, "That's the wrong color." And I said, "Oh man, I'm sorry.
Right.
I washed my clothes." They didn't want to hear it. And that was my first negative encounter. And like I said before, there's a story behind everything. It was my responsibility to make sure I had the you know, bus pass should have been the right color, and it was, and you know, it was a mistake on my part. But I ended up having to pay I think it was a $10 charge. So I got a criminal summons. I had to go to court. I went with my
What?
dad. Yeah, I went
Oh,
with my dad. Yeah, I
God.
remember standing before the judge, and the judge, I couldn't even really explain my story to the judge because the judge wasn't even trying to hear it. The judge was told it was just a white colored bus pass versus, you know, blue. And I ended up having to pay $10. You know, so that was my first encounter. But my encounters in Baltimore were really great. You know, when I came to Morgan, there was a police officer that patrolled the Northwood Shopping Center, you know, like how Morganites, you know, hung out in there.
Yeah.
And it was a great Northeast foot officer that he was just a gentleman, and you know, just great experiences seeing him there, and even the officers on Morgan State University, they were the same way, you know. So I had a very favorable experiences, you know, with them growing up. Even as a young man, before I even joined the police department, a police officer actually talked me into joining the police department.
That's what I was gonna ask you. Like, when did you know you wanted to be in law enforcement?
Yeah.
So I guess that was when.
Yeah, I was a bartender at a bar in the city.
Oh, wow.
It's off of Greenmount Avenue, and there was an officer that came in here all the time. He, of course, off duty, regular street clothes, and we would chit chat every single Thursday and Friday. And he said, "Darryl, you got to do it," you know. And I ended up going down to, at the time, this was in October, November of 1988, and I ended up going down to the War Memorial Plaza, and it was a job fair. And it was the state police, it was Baltimore County, it was Baltimore City. And I went to state police and I said, in your police academy, do you go home or do you stay on campus? What do you do? And he says, no, you got to stay on campus. And I was like, no. So I went to Baltimore City and I said, police academy, do you have to stay on campus? And the guy was like, man, get out of here. No, you don't have to stay on campus. You're home every day.
Right.
So I said, can I get an application? You know, so I got the application and got hired right away, and I was so excited when I saw Rob. I told Rob, you know, hey, I got hired, and you know, he kind of mentored me, going up, going through the police department, you know.
Let me ask you something about mentoring really quick. I met a little girl yesterday. I've been doing like little community movie nights for the kids, and she is around 7 years old. And she told me she wanted to be a police officer. But I don't think I can be a police officer. I said, yes, you can. I said, why do you don't think you could be a police officer? She said, because I made a mistake and brought my brother's knuckle brass to school.
Yeah, brass knuckle.
Yeah, right, to school. And she said, don't I have some kind of kid record or something, like some kind of kid violent record? And I said, and she's a little girl. And I said, they don't have that. I said, you will be fine. I said, you can be anything you want to be. But what would you tell, how would you mentor a kid like that, where she's gone through an experience, and I guess the police was involved in school, so now she just thinks she has a record and she has no chance of being a police officer. It really affected her. So, like, what would you say to her?
You know, I think the first thing that she needs to see is that police officer that works her community. You know, really to take the time to go to her school and really take the time to see her when she's, going to and from the grocery store, outside playing and just having a conversation with her, telling her, how special she is,
right.
And that in life, that we do make mistakes in life, and that give her reassurance that that was a mistake that she did, and that she does not have a record, and just kind of encourage her.
For sure, she had a record, and I thought it was so sad, that so young, but you are exposed to so much in this city. Yeah.
Well, Tiffany, when you see her again or when you mentor her again, let me know. I'm going to meet you.
I will see her next week. She will be here next Saturday.
I'm going to come and meet you, and I'm going to have a nice little talk with her.
Please do, because we need more women you know.
Absolutely.
And my daughter wants to be a firewoman and the police.
Oh, wow.
But I was like, oh, I don't know, firewoman.
Yeah,
But we need more women too, you know.
absolutely.
And but I just thought it was so sad that she was willing to give up over. She said, I can't do it, like over this experience. It really, you know,
Yeah,
had an
wow.
effect on her.
I'm sure that touched your heart. Was it just touched mine?
Yeah, it really did, and it was just, you know, it's sad because you hear stories like this from
Mhm.
really young kids. We're affected very early now with
Absolutely.
law enforcement, with things happening. It wasn't her; it was just a mistake. But
It
you
was a
know,
mistake. It
and
was.
it affected her though.
I want to tell her the story about my bus pass. You know, I
Oh,
used to.
you
Yeah,
should, because
yeah,
that's what they remind. I'm like, yeah. And she needs a mentor though. You know, if this is what
yeah,
she wants, she needs, you know, a
yeah,
mentor. So when you mentioned that, I thought about her, and
yeah. Well,
yeah.
I'm thinking of someone in the department that would be great to talk with her.
Mhm.
I haven't spoken to this person in a while, but I'll figure a way out to get a hold of her because she would be great. Or I'll just put you in contact with her.
Oh, that would be great.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and
wonderful
I don't
person.
want any, you know, we don't want any child, you know, letting go of their
Mhm.
dreams over, you know.
Mm,
That's
wow.
why we need mentors.
How about
And
that?
even as adults, we need mentors. So,
Yeah, 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 we do.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we are doing the wind down. I call it the wind down.
Okay.
So the wind down is just random questions to ask to
Okay.
wind the conversation down and leave on a positive note.
Okay.
So I'm kind of a weirdo. Like I love zodiac signs, and everyone I know knows that I love zodiac signs. It's like I'm able to remember people by their zodiac signs.
Oh, wow. Wow.
I'm weird like that. I just love it. So my first question is, what is your zodiac sign? And do you believe that your traits, like your personal traits, are similar to your sign?
Absolutely. I'm a Virgo.
Okay.
Um, and I am very meticulous, to the T. And they say Virgos are very loyal. I
Mhm.
am, very loyal to family and friends. And the other part of Virgo is really the caring part, and that's me. I've been that way growing up. I learned that through my mom. So I didn't really need a Virgo trait for that, but
Right.
caring is probably one of the biggest things that Virgo traits that I probably carry.
Okay. What is your favorite day of the week and why?
You know what,
No.
Tiffany? You know what? Obviously, growing up as a child, your favorite day of the week is a Friday. Because it
Mhm.
was a weekend. You were going to have time to play and do all the fun things that you wanted to do. Yeah, even in college, it was the same thing. Was we didn't take many weekend classes. And then when I joined the police department, it kind of changed because you basically work every single day.
Right.
So it really changed. Monday's a Monday, a Friday's a Friday. It didn't make a difference to me. And then even at the institution where I was, as crazy as this sounds, favorite days was kind of like based on the meal that you knew you were going to get.
Right.
Like Tuesdays, you had Mondays were, it was like a, it was a one of those days that it could have been anything. And Tuesdays, you had the chicken patties that were really delicious. And, Wednesdays with burgers. Thursdays was the baked chicken. So when I was at the institution, I had my favorite days, and probably was Tuesdays because those patties were so delicious.
Mhm.
And then now, present day, being retired and just working from home, and I do work at the church. Do volunteer work. To me, Tiffany, all the days are really the same.
Oh, wow.
It's like all one day, you know,
Mhm.
with 6, 7 hours rest in between,
I
so
feel like that now that we're in COVID.
exactly.
It's like
Yeah,
it never
exactly,
ends.
exactly, exactly. Yeah. Hmm.
Okay, so when is the last time you tried something new and what was it?
So tried something new. So
Mhm.
I probably would say two things. One is that I tried a pure vegan meal
Mhm.
a couple of weeks ago. Actually, I try and do it every single Sunday. there's a young lady from Baltimore. She has Kaylani's Kitchen. I normally order from her and get my Sunday all vegan meals. But if that didn't answer the question, this past Friday, don't laugh at me.
No, but that did. But go ahead.
I actually was working at my church, and my work partner and I were actually hanging up. She's a young lady, hanging up, around 400 or 500 prom dresses. So they were donated, and I'm sitting there scratching my head, picking them up and trying to put hangers and looking for the dress sizes, and I didn't know what I was doing. So my partner was like, Darryl, just hang them up and I'll take care of the rest of it. So I never did that before, although I have a daughter, but that was
too much.
Yeah, I'm still scratching my head. We have another 300 or 400. So if you know anybody that, I know we're in COVID, but if you know any young ladies, and there's even little boys stuff there, that around prom time, or if there's an event or something where they need a prom dress or a nice gown or a nice dress, please follow up with me and let me know. We got churches.
You can provide the information. I can have the information for that also.
Absolutely.
And as far as the vegan thing, I don't know if you tried Land of Kush, but I love Land of Kush.
Yeah.
On Howard Street. They're really good.
Okay.
Their crab cakes, I love it.
Wow.
So that's something that, I don't know if you tried it yet. If you know.
I'll try it next week.
It's really good. Check out Land of Kush. Okay, so what advice would you give your 15-year-old self?
Just maintain your self-esteem, maintain your dignity, no matter what the challenges that you have in life. Just keep your humility. Just remember that God is the one who says who you are, and nobody else. Yeah.
And what are your words to live by?
So I probably would have to say, biblically speaking, spiritually speaking, I got to go to Psalms 112, 6 and 7, and says, surely the righteous will not be shaken. They shall be remembered. They will have no fear, because their hearts are trusting in the Lord. So I would say that spiritually. Outside of that, I probably would say just don't regret failure. Use it as a stepping stone for your next door to open.
Okay. This is the last question.
Okay.
What do you love about yourself? And I just think it's important that we all do it. It's always a process sometimes to do it for some of us. Yeah.
I love that question. And my answer is really simple. And it's being a father or fatherhood. That's what I love. And although I love my kids dearly, when I was on a job for 30 years, I miss, just like officers today, they miss so many events, school plays, PTA meetings, basketball games, just events. I just miss so many. And now that, I'm retired and I'm home, I'm just enjoying, just relationship, enjoy being a father and, father of my son and my daughter. To me, that means the world to me now.
Yeah, and people always think I'm kind of crazy, but I'm like, I love motherhood, though. I love motherhood. Yeah, I mean, I have one, but but I love it, and it's nothing like that kind of love. I don't know. I've never experienced that kind of love until I became a mother.
Amen. And that's the reason why I appreciate having me on, and that's the whole reason why we need this whole thing with mutual respect in community and policing, mutual respect, because we can't go another day without a mother losing their child.
Oh yes.
A dad losing their loved one. Yeah, it's more the reason now. Now's the time.
It is. Thank you so much for being on my first show. You don't know how much this means to me. It's just an honor to have you here. And I just want to thank my new listeners. I appreciate y'all for taking time to be here. And I will see everyone in the district. Thank you so much.